Here is the stark reality. 800 million people go to bed hungry every night. 3 billion people are not eating enough of the right food, and 2 billion too much of the wrong food. We cannot possibly overcome hunger and malnutrition without fixing our food systems. Yet the challenges they face, climate change, wars, recessions, require big solutions. Governments must play a leading role. That means putting in place relevant policies to drive the changes we need. But because the challenges are complex, governments cannot do this alone. We must hear from young people, businesses, farmer groups, UN agencies, and more. The perspectives of a diverse range of stakeholders must be considered in crafting a shared vision of true transformation in our food systems for every country. Changes are constant, but progress remains too slow. Too much unhealthy food rich in salt, sugar, or fat flood our markets. Systems must be shaped to drive industries down the right paths to boost healthier food. We must phase out systems where unhealthy foods dominate. Policy here is key. Policy sets out the guiding principles for laws, regulations, budget allocations, and good foundations from which actions flow by governments and, crucially, by businesses. At GAIN, we know that real change happens when policy meets action. That's why we are committed to ensuring food systems deliver on their promise: healthier, more accessible diets for all. Collaboration, partnership, and implementation are what turn vision into reality. Together, we are making a difference. Let's keep walking the talk. Welcome to this special edition of the Interview Cruncher. 2025 is a special time to reflect on the progress made in shaping food systems, nutrition, and sustainability over the past 5 years, and to chart the path ahead. In this episode, we dive deep into GAIN's policy work and explore what the next 5 years hold, particularly in the context of Sustainable Development Goals, food systems transformation, and the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program. Joining us is a distinguished panel of experts who will help us unpack major global developments, the policy shifts, and groundbreaking innovations. With us is Dr. Jamie Morrison, Senior Advisor, Policy and External Relations here at GAIN. We also have Ruth Okoa, the Country Director for GAIN Kenya Country Office. We are happy to have Akila, Act for Food youth leader. Akila is keen to engage more youth in food systems policies. We also honor to have Tom Arnold, who is the Irish government special envoy for food systems. Welcome. I am your host, Mark Gashagwa. Together, we'll examine the challenges, opportunities, and the evolving policy landscape that will define the future of food systems. Stay tuned for an insightful discussion. Jamie, allow me to start with you. What is GAIN's policy approach on food systems transformation?
Thank you, Mark. If we think back a few years to the Food Systems Summit, I think this is really when GAIN's work on policy came to the fore. And the reason for this is that the Food Systems Summit was very important in elevating the recognition amongst governments, but also amongst the many actors involved in food system activities, of the urgent need for transformational shifts in the way that food systems operate. And this was illustrated through an understanding of the massive gains that can be achieved from food system transformation for improving people's health, for generating better livelihoods, for nature, and for the future well-being of global populations. But it was also important in pointing to the fact that pulling a policy lever to improve one food system outcome could have dramatically negative effects on others. So in approaching this work, we, yes, need to improve nutritional outcomes, but at the same time, we want to avoid leaving people unable to afford healthy diets, or continue to drive epidemic levels of premature deaths and disability, harm the environment, or increase inequality around the world. Now, a key outcome of the Food Systems Summit process was the generation of national pathways. And these were built through the involvement of various different stakeholders at country level, building up from an identification of the problems that they faced to propositions on the types of solutions that may be important for addressing those particular problems. But operationalizing those pathways isn't the role of a single sector or ministry. We need to work to help governments to improve coherence across different sectors, to translate policies which are being developed at national level down to subnational level, and also to better align domestic budgets with policy priorities for the food system. Now, for GAIN, a key element of the shift in approach is a greater evidence on strengthened policy decision-making. And over the past 5 years, we've been working to help governments build the scaffolding of food system change, focusing on enabling access to healthy diets, but understanding how this overlaps with other food systems outcomes. And our work is not just about supporting governments to enact new policies, but helping them to develop their national food and nutrition strategies in a way that enables often disparate ministries, departments, and agencies to sing from the same hymn sheet. Now, not all of this work is headline catching, but it is crucial if we're to see transformative change. And just to give a few examples of the types of tools and approaches that we've developed, again, but also working with partners to deliver, we're working with Academia 2063 to help governments identify areas of policy incoherence and to focus their actions on developing more cohesive and coherent policy sets. With IFAD and the World Bank, we're working to support governments to apply 3FS, which is the methodology to help governments understand how their food systems are being financed. We're also using the Food System Dashboard and Countdown initiative to help governments to track key food system indicators of the health of the food systems going forward. And we're seeking to help crowd in often voices that are often ignored. And Akila will speak to this later when she identifies youth as one of the key players in food system transformation. Another aspect that we're keen to work on is to have a better understanding of how climate actions affect nutrition and vice versa. And we're doing that through the Initiative on Climate Action and Nutrition, or ICAN. And finally, as a final example, we're helping governments and development partners to understand the types of political economy bottlenecks that countries face during transformation and how they can start to navigate those bottlenecks. So these are some of the cogs that are turning in the background, which are all helping to build governments' will, knowledge, and capacity in areas where the technical detail can quite often get very tricky. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jamie, for those wonderful examples that you shared with us. Shifting gears a bit, going now to Kenya. Ruth, how has the journey been directing the GAIN Kenya country office in the context of food systems?
Thank you, Mark, for the question. Given the malnutritional situation in the country, with an 18% level of stunting for children under 5, high level obesity rates, and actually high levels of non-communicable diseases, there is work to be done for GAIN Kenya in the food system transformation space. Looking back at our work, we've been involved in the food systems transformation since 2010, when we supported the government to introduce food fortification, particularly targeting flour, edible oils, and salt. However, in 2021, at the UN Food System Summit, Kenya as a country committed to 5 pathways that included diversifying diets to include vegetables and fruits, looking at transforming agriculture, more of digitalization, looking at how the involvement of women and children in women and youth, in agriculture, and also looking at having strong action towards climate and looking at financing of the agricultural sector and partnerships. So GAIN has been on the forefront to supporting the government in these 5 commitments. And to that end, we are part of the technical working group that is chaired by the national convener that looks at the implementation and monitors the 5 pathways at different levels, both at the national and the subnational levels. As GAIN, we've also supported different dialogues to discuss the implementation of the 5 pathways in the country. Towards the middle of 2024, again supported the government of Kenya in writing the report on stock taking report of the UNFFS, looking at what has the government of Kenya done towards the implementation of the 5 commitments. And actually, we were part of the government delegation to deliver this report at the hub in Rome. At the subnational level, we've been working with different county governments to see how we translate the 5 commitments, the 5 pathways, to the subnational levels. So one of the things that we've done is supported county governments to develop a county nutrition action plan, which is a framework that counties use to see what are your priorities in nutrition, how do we implement those priorities, and not only that, what budgets, what funding do we need, or what kind of resourcing do we need towards the implementation of those activities. We've done this in several counties and now looking at supporting counties to develop food safety bills that would go to the county assembly to enhance the space for food system transformation. And at the national level, we've also partnered with different stakeholders. We've partnered with IFOD and the World Bank to look at the financial flows towards food system. At the national level, a study has been done that shows what percentage of any GDP goes towards nutritional or food system activities. We are now picking this and sub-stepping it to the sub-national level and having the same study carried out to see our commitment towards nutritional activities or food system activities at the county level in the country. GAIN has also supported different enterprises through the Nutritious Food Financing facilities, N3F, that gives credit to enterprises that are in food system transformation so that they would improve the scale of their activities to offer healthier foods to a larger population in the country. So our commitment in food system is unparalleled, and we would want to also now look into supporting the CADAP declaration in Kampala that the African heads of state have committed to improving food and nutrition security by 2035. Thanks, Mark. Over to you.
Thank you, Ruth. You've actually mentioned something very important and quite good about subnational work and also the food systems dashboard. Why do you think this is important in transforming food systems?
Thank you very much, Mark. The dashboard is key as it gives us, it helps us have informed decision in the food system space because it gathers data for different indicators, food system indicators that can be analyzed and used for policy implementation or policy development in spaces that we think there's lack of policy that would enhance the food systems transformation space. So dashboard is one of the key things that GAIN Kenya has participated in, and we intend to, downstep this to other counties so that we have a rich dashboard that has several indicators that would enhance our decision towards food system transformation.
Thank you, Ruth, for telling us more about the policy work in Kenya. Indeed, a lot of good work is going on there. We normally hear nothing for the youth without the youth, and I'm happy to hear from Akila. Akila, how does it feel as a young person working in the food systems policy space?
Okay, thank you, Mark. So, as a young person, like a girl in her 20s, it might feel very young to start in the food policy systems and everything. But I think food is something that we experience, but not exactly think about it until we see the gaps in it. Because food is something much more than what's on our plate. It's more about sustainability, equity, justice, and even climate. So, most of us, the youth, basically, we think that food systems revolves around big decision makers, policy makers, governments, or institutions where we cannot even think to reach the level. But honestly, I think food policies is something that revolves around everyone because it starts from our everyday lunch, from the food or school cafeterias, from the local grocery markets, from the farmer market, and everything around us. So, food policy is something that everyone should take part in a discussion. And we youth have fresh perspective, we have innovations. Most importantly, we have our voices that should reach the population, that should reach the decision table, which I believe. And if I talk about the challenges about taking part in the food systems, then I think there are quite a number of challenges that we usually face, and some of them could be the lack of representation in the decision making. For example, let's say in COP, in WHO, in UN food systems, anything. But mostly, even nowadays, the international systems are giving us opportunities, but the national things, in my country's perspective, if I say, most of us, most of the youth, we do not even know that national food policies exist. Until a few days back, I just got to know myself that as well. So that's it. I think we need more representation in international and national bodies. We have also limited access to resources and education. We have financial, also social and cultural barriers, geopolitical influences, and a lot. So apart from these challenges, if we actively and collectively think about it, take part in food systems, I think we can, engage more youth in it, engage more fresh perspective, and engage more ensuring a proper food justice to everyone.
Thank you, Akila. Um, why do you think it's important? Why do you think it's crucial for youth to be involved in food systems transformation?
Okay, so just I said before, Mark, I think youth brings a fresh perspective in in everything. For example, let's say we are going to schools every day, right? But we do we even think like what are we eating in our school lunch? What is given? How it is even grown? Are this fruit coming from local markets? Are these local products? Like we think about this subconsciously, but do not talk about it because we often feel like this is not something we should talk about. Maybe this is something, the big leaders should talk about, but it's not like that. As youth, we can bring the innovation in this. For example, I'll give you a very flat and easy example of this. Just a few days back, probably a few years ago, I saw a high school student, probably from grade 7 to 8. He just made tiles from the bamboo waste. So also the using the bamboo as their food sources. So how amazing it is that his innovation can bring such new, perspective in food reduction, waste reduction, uh, and such things. But this innovation has gone in a like it is not uh, recognized as well as it should be. So that's what I'm talking about. Like we have the innovation, we have the creations, but we just need the platform to display this.
Thank you, Akila. Ruth, we've had very good examples about innovation that youth can actually bring to the table. What's your take on youth meaningful engagement in the Kenya policy processes?
Thank you very much, Mark. I believe that youth must be engaged in the food system transformation and the various and many platforms through which we can engage the youth and which Gain Kenya has used to engage the youth. One of the things that we know in our Vegetable for All program that aims to improve the consumption of indigenous vegetables in the country. We've had youth entrepreneurs that comes with brilliant ideas on how to make sure that vegetables can reach up to the last mile vendor in the community. To that end, we've had innovative ideas like youth setting up digital platform, marketing platform, e-commerce, where the vegetables can be sold to different clients using e-commerce. We know very many people are busy in the country. They come from office late. They're not able to pass by to buy vegetables. These youth have developed digital platform that enables people to order online and deliver at their doorstep the vegetables that they need. We've also seen youth come with very innovative ideas of adding value to the different products, the different foods that naturally young people and many people consider non-palatable, not very interesting. They've come up with innovative ideas to make the food more palatable, adding value to these foods. We've seen that with having sorghum or finger millet popcorns that is very tasty, but also improving on the nutritional outcome given the high levels of nutrients that sorghum and millet have in the country. So we've seen youth coming with very innovative ideas to improve on our food system. Again, I would say that they've also been very engaged in production, looking at mechanization of agricultural space to increase the food productivity, but also to make it more interesting and less laborious than what we've seen in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Those are very good examples that you've shared with us. I want us to shift our gears a bit. We've heard a lot from the youth and also from the countries, or rather in Kenya. Tom, we have touched on a few things here. From a broader perspective, what are the opportunities and challenges in food systems policy space?
Well, there's a very big, broad challenge in that so many countries are cutting their aid programs. And the most extreme example of that, of course, is the United States. So there are really hard choices are going to have to be made. And I think that included in those hard choices is the need to really keep the emphasis on nutrition as a part of the aid program. We've had last October a very important study produced by the World Bank called Investment Framework for Nutrition. And that showed that for every dollar invested in nutrition, you get a return of $23. Now, this is even more greater than the figure that we've been working on up to now, which was a 16-to-1 return. And why do you get those big returns? Because you're achieving reductions in stunting, in wasting, you're increasing breastfeeding, you're dealing with anemia. And these are the real practical reasons why investing in nutrition is of critical importance. And that, I think, that basic intellectual argument for the importance of nutrition has to be one of the consequences or one of the outcomes of the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris in March. We've recently conducted a study here in Ireland about our track record in supporting nutrition over 20 years. And the story is a good one. First of all, Ireland has, over the last 20 years, has taken a very conscious decision to prioritize nutrition, and particularly early childhood nutrition. So we've been very strong supporters of the scaling up nutrition movement. Ireland was, and Concern in particular as an NGO, developed what became the CMAM, the Community Management of Acute Malnutrition, to deal with acute malnutrition. So we've a very strong track record. And I think there is a real commitment here in Ireland to go to the Nutrition for Growth Summit and say, yeah, we're going to continue this honourable track record. And okay, there's one part of it is the issue of financial commitments, but of course, more important, I would say even more important than that is the policy commitment to keep nutrition at the center of development policy.
Thank you very much, Tom. Tracking progress on food systems policy milestones is critical. How do you measure progress in this area?
Well, the importance of a policy commitment is because if you're to achieve results in nutrition, first of all, it means governments all over the world prioritizing it within their own national policy and keeping that policy consistent. You can't achieve change without long-term commitment to working towards that change. And that particularly applies, I think, in nutrition, because, you don't turn a switch and reduce stunting levels. You're talking about 5-10 year timeframes before you see results. But when you do see results, they're really important results. They're important in the lives of an individual, in the future of that, but particularly for a country. Nutrition is a great investment for a country. That's a bottom line insight which more countries have to recognize and act upon.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Policy implementation is a key ingredient for food systems transformation. What do you see as a best practice in policy implementation?
Countries have to own their own policies. And ideally, there should be political prioritization from the top. And also, governments on their own can't achieve everything. I mean, it's governments working with the private sector, working with civil society, working with grassroots communities. That's where you can achieve real change. And, I think it's very good that we've had 4 Nutrition for Growth summits over the last 12 years. And we have to keep that focus. And we have, of course, the Global Nutrition Report, which is produced every year, which tracks at a country level how well or how badly countries are succeeding. So we have to keep that emphasis, that priority. And, I hope the meeting in Paris will be, even in very difficult circumstances, the meeting in Paris will give the concept of the need to prioritize nutrition a boost. In all of this discussion, and we've heard it today from the voice of Akila from Bangladesh, the importance of young people committing to this idea at an early stage, that their own future and the future of their country is linked to very solid policies on nutrition. That's so important. And the energy that young people can bring and the activism that they can bring is an essential ingredient if we're to win this war against hunger and malnutrition.
Thank you very much, Tom. Now, circling back, Jamie, GAIN is always working on something nice and exciting. What are the key things we can expect in policy work moving forward?
Thank you, Mark. I think first point to make, and something we all need a much greater awareness of, is that governments are not static. Priorities can often shift like quicksand, reflecting both domestic and global realities. And we need to be able to adjust our focus and our approach in recognition of these shifts. And In the current context, for example, political will to tackle chronic hunger and malnutrition in the face of the many competing priorities that governments face urgently needs to be nurtured. But this is difficult. And one of the challenges is that although we know the types of actions that need to be taken, there aren't many good country examples of success in transformative change or blazing countries that we can hold up as examples of how countries can move the process forward. We need to be much better at documenting and communicating success, but also recognizing that translating these successes to other country contexts can often be fraught with difficulty. Now, in 2025, we have a number of opportunities to move the agenda forward in this respect. The UN Food System Summit +4, the stock-taking moment 4 years after the summit, which will take place in Addis Ababa at the end of July, has as its first objective, and let me quote, documenting progress on the implementation of integrated approaches towards food system transformation as expressed through whole of government approaches and collaboration between different ministries. Now, this is key. It's not just about documenting individual activities which are somehow connected to food system transformation, but it's about documenting integrated processes. And so I think this opportunity will help us to craft some of these success stories and to really use those to help other countries take forward their policy agenda. The stock-taking moment, of course, will not just focus on documentation. It will also stress the imperative of strengthening accountability and of unlocking investments. In Africa, there is also another emerging opportunity, and Ruth has already alluded to this, the adoption of the Kampala Declaration. This stands out as a serious effort to reshape the comprehensive African Agricultural Development Programme into one which commits to building resilient and sustainable agri-food systems in Africa. And if you look at the strategy and action plan which comes together with the declaration, it really does try not just to identify individual actions which are important, but to do that in an integrated approach, a systemic approach. And I think this provides a real opportunity for the continent moving forward. Now, most of the current global and regional political processes, such as the ones I've just mentioned, have as a core the mobilization of increased investment for food system transformation. And clearly in the current context, this is going to be one of the big hurdles that we have to get over moving forward. This is important, but we also need much more focus on monitoring the impacts of these increased investments, on adjusting our approaches, on building bridges between groups who aren't used to working together or who are often used to competing for the same resources. And so I just want to end with a couple of examples of opportunities where this sort of collaboration is starting to happen. One of these is the Zero Hunger Coalition, of which GAIN is a partner. This has been a key advocacy platform for increased investment in food system transformation. But it's backed up this advocacy by developing country-specific evidence and costings of the required investment, and is now facilitating the transfer of knowledge between countries as to how to build these types of costing into their decision-making processes. So it's bringing together a number of different elements as part of the overall picture of support to countries. Another example, which I think we will see really scale up in the coming years, is the shaping of social protection programs to deliver on nutrition and other food system outcomes. And this is going to be particularly important in helping to bridge the growing affordability gap with respect to healthy diets. Often this will require a change in approach to design. And for example, the human-centered design approach, which is being championed by GAIN, seeks to amplify the voices of beneficiaries, facilitating co-innovation and design rather than top-down design as we've seen so often in the past. this has much greater chance of success in delivering positive outcomes. So again, we want to be part of the change reflected in these policy processes and coalitions of actions. Governments must lead transformation of food systems, but we're here to support, and we're grateful to our many partners who believe in the mission and are supporting us moving forward. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jamie, for those wonderful thoughts. You've touched on innovative ways of resources and resource mobilization that organizations can use. Uh, with the contraction of development aid, how can organizations and countries pivot to overcome this challenge? Jamie, you can share, and then Ruth, you can also come in.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think we've recognized this challenge for a number of years now, that the proportion of development aid in the overall support to food system transformation has been on a downward trend. And so there have been a number of aspects to try to mitigate that. Firstly, and I mentioned earlier, the use of tools such as 3FS, Financing Flows to Food Systems, developed by the World Bank and IFAD, which has been really helpful in helping governments to identify how they are currently using their budgetary resources to fund food system transformation, and to identify areas of inefficiency or overlap, areas where there are gaps. So we get a much better targeting of domestic resources and the overseas development aid which is available behind food system priorities. So that identification of better ways of doing things, I think, is very important. But another aspect is, if we look at the concept of food system transformation, as I've reiterated in previous answers, it really is about connecting different actors. And so we look at the type of investment in food systems that are required. We need to think much more in terms of coordinated investment. It's not just getting more investment from farmers and more investment from processors and more investment from retailers. It's about coordinating their investments to unlock particular bottlenecks in value chains, for example, so that we really see the benefits of the development of those value chains coming forward. So I would say, yes, we need to recognize that there is a shrinking in the available sort of foreign resources in a sense, but make much more efficient use of resources already available and potentially available at the country level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the question. I think it's high time that we begin to think differently in terms of investment in nutrition, given the aid that is shrinking. And this has been happening over time. We've seen this, that for the last 10 years, aid has really been shrinking. One of the things that I like and appreciate is the CAADP, Kampala Declaration, where the African heads of states committed to transform food system and agriculture in Africa. And that therefore, I believe that they need to be held accountable to put the investments that they declared in that summit and be followed up. I think this is something that has not been happening in the past to a great extent. There's not been a lot of follow-up and push to the African heads of state to live to their commitments to these different declarations. I think this is an opportunity we have. And as again, in our advocacy platform, this is something that we should now take forward and, with other stakeholders and hold the government accountable to some of the Kampala Declaration of 2025. As been mentioned by Jeremy, I think the 3FS provides a big opportunity to now hold the county governments also accountable at the subnational level to account. Having this exercise and seeing what investments we have in the agricultural sector and the nutrition sector, then we need to push at the national level for greater involvement and greater budgetary allocation to at the county level towards nutrition or food system activities at the county level. Gain also probably was visionary and saw this in the past and came with the N3F, the Nutritious Food Financing Facility, where they support enterprises that are in the food system transformation, giving them credits that could support them in upscaling their innovative ideas, their enterprises to be able to support in the food system transformation. Finally, I want to say that, often we've not adequately engaged and involved the private sector in food system transformation. I think this is the time. This is the opportunity now to begin those dialogues and discussions on the role that the private sector can play in transforming the food system. We've worked with the private sector, but at a lower level, the SMEs, which we know are in the very critical supply chain in moving the foods up to the folk. But we need to engage the high level private sector and see what the involvement could be in the food system transformation. We need to develop PPPs in the food system transformation so that the government, the public, and the private sector all come together and invest in food system. There are lots of opportunities, and I think reducing on aid also prevents an opportunity to be innovative. I think we probably will be really inward thinking. It's opportunity to be outward thinking now and see what other opportunities exist, particularly in Africa and in Kenya, that could support in transforming food systems. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Ruth and Jamie. Akila, coming back to you, we've talked about funding and the challenges around that. The big policy questions around sustainability, the environment, climate change, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. As an Act for Food youth leader, what's your take on that?
Thank you, Mark. So, to start with your question, I think I would like to introduce Act for Food first, like what we do and what is our role in it. So, Act for Food is a youth led movement, and we are really working towards the transformation of food systems. And we have youth leaders from more than 15 countries. So, it is actually a global organization, you can say, or a global movement. But all of us, although we are from different countries, we are together trying to change in a collective action. And for the past 1 year, I would say, like from my joining, we have tried to make collaborative actions for in 3 different sectors, and we are trying to relate them with the SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals. We are trying to relate them with SDG 1, 2, 3. As you can see, there is no poverty, no hunger, and also climate action. SDG also probably 11, that is sustainable development. And we're also trying to relate it with SDG 17, that is collaboration with our partnerships with stakeholders. So what we're trying to do, or what we are focusing in the next or future years, that we will try on doing the school meal or nutrition campaign. What we want here, that we do not want the school meal or school cafeteria just for now or just for the show. We want a behavioral shift, or let's say a cultural shift overall, so that children from the very young age, they have a nutritious or healthy upbringing. Because I would like to say a little bit of personal reflection of myself, because I am from a medical background or a medical student. So what I usually see regularly, that in hospitals we see very young age people, let's 20, 25, these age people, they are coming with complexities like obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, which is not really good. Because we as youth, we are the future, right? We have to take care of our own health. So that's what we are targeting. We are targeting to create the behavioral shift from the very young age, and we want to include the sustainable or the climate related changes in this as well. And for this, we are trying to bring light, that is our collective action number 2, which is bringing on the cultural, national, environmental values on the indigenous food things. We want to bring in the local product that is affordable, that is also sustainable. We want to implement the school gardening so that children can know where the food is coming from, how the food is growing, like what are the nutritious value, and why do we exactly need this healthy meal. And that's our collective action number 2. And the third or the last collective action, that is we're trying to expose the harmful commercial product, because we do not want, I'll give an example with this, that is the baby food, let's say. So what we usually do, that is for 6 months of infants, they should be done only on breastfeeding, right? And no artificial food or anything else. After 6 months, we do the weaning. But what we usually see that in some developing countries, because the mothers are actually working, or let's say they're not nutritious enough on their own, so the commercial products, they're trying to use this as their profit. So we want to stop those. And this is just an example, of course. So we want to expose the commercial marketing. We want to elevate the good. We want to bring in the sustainable products that is also climate resilient. And that's it. That's our sustainable thing. And also we want to reduce the food waste, climate, maintain the climate goodness. That's it. Thank you, Mark. Back to you.
Thank you, Akila. That's a lot of good work and a lot of good plans that you have as Act for Food. And thank you for sharing those wonderful thoughts. That brings us to the end of this insightful discussion. We have explored key policy opportunities, emerging challenges, and innovations shaping the future of food systems. A big thank you to our panel of experts for sharing their valuable insights, and to you, our audience, for tuning in. The conversation doesn't stop here. Let's continue working toward a more sustainable, nutritious, and resilient food system. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and keep driving change. Thank you very much.